Yeah, the next question is how have you processed, kind of our current situation, but whether it be lost opportunities, business plans, strategies, how has that affected your day-to-day business life? And so I think you just spoke to it directly when you just said, man, about a couple of weeks ago, does this matter? And so the season that we find ourselves in, we're asking those questions a lot more. Is what I'm doing matter? So would love for y'all to jump in and chime in on that question. You can ever, I don't need to choose. So just jump in wherever you want to go. Just let's keep this thing flowing.
I'll follow up on just what Jason said, because I'm on a panel tomorrow that's a pretty significant, it's like this kind of global entrepreneur group, whatever. We had to do a pre-panel thing and everything. And one of the doctors argues that everybody has PTSD, they don't even know it. So I can't speak to that. I'm not an expert. I don't personally feel like that. I feel like I've had concern for things. I mean, this is the least I've flown in 6 weeks in over a decade. So that's a different thing, for me. And we lost a ton of business. That's different. I want to provide for people, that there's those kind of things that are losses. Okay. But I am, my personality is a bias toward action. So I have to pause and make time to discipline for me is on the prayer side, on the rest side, on that. What I guess we'd say, Lisa and I, my wife and I, she's a beer, and she runs a prayer class, and that's her natural state is the being. And I have to pull back from being the Mary and Martha, that piece. But I think there is a value to work. Sometimes Martha gets the wrong rap, and we're called to bear fruit. In Chronicles, we're called to be strong and courageous and do the work, even when we don't feel like it. Nehemiah is staying up all night. He's got one hand here, and they are working through the night to get this wall built. So there's value to work in how we do it too. So some of the things I thought of in the crisis, and I'll just jump into what I think you're saying is, when I realized it was for real, I was at Penn State doing a thing for the speaking for leadership there, flew back, had an emergency meeting the next day. I've tried to be especially transparent in this time. Like, this is what we need. We're all in this together. If we take loss, kind of really sharing a lot. I did something right away. So some things I did well, some things I haven't. I can give examples of what other leaders that I'm walking with have done well and not too. But one thing we did is, I often say, if you have more than 3 priorities, you don't have any. This is not my truth. This is Collins said this in Good to Great. Okay. But what I said in crisis, you got to pull it from 3 to 1. We decided that day, all hands on deck. Everybody has one. We're bringing it in ambiguity and uncertainty. We got to get to absolute different level of clarity. And so we shut down a whole bunch of projects, and we narrowed on what can we do to get through this, and what can we do to maybe even thrive through this. We're seeing some huge benefits. Back to the health thing. I mean, it's been really a health thing for me not to get on a plane. It's been a health thing for me to see my kids all the time. There's some positive health, but we I don't want to go too long here. Just cut me off. But a few ideas. One of them is a president that I work with. This is his. He went to runs Populist Group. He went to the War College in the 80s, and at the U.S. Army War College, they taught VUCA, which is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And it's like, you land in Afghanistan or wherever, even if you study it, you haven't been there before. It's uncertain. You don't know what it's going to be like. And so notice that. Notice the uncertainty, the complexity, the ambiguity. It's okay. That's the time we're in. We haven't been through this before. And then ask 2 things. And these are the takeaways. 1, what can I control right now? And it turns out there's way more than you think. And number 2, what should I do first? And that's what we handled it like a little bit in that first meeting. It's like, okay, we don't know. Nobody knows how long this is going to last. That's one of the big things. Nobody knows this, that, a lot of things. We don't know if it's going to be a blizzard or an ice age for sure. In our world, we are figuring on, I think it is appropriate to look what the Stockdale paradox says. If you remember, Stockdale stuck in the Vietnam War camps. Admiral Stockdale was asked, what about the people that died? What was it with them? Well, that's easy. They were all optimists. Like, wow. The optimists all died because they thought, I'll get out by Christmas, I'll get out by then, and they just gave up. Whereas he says that Stockdale paradox is there's this unwavering faith, but there's this willingness to deal with the brutal facts. And that's a thing right now of we're thinking long-term like the mini ice age. That's what we're thinking. What if we don't make a penny the way we used to make a penny for a year and a half? How will we survive then? And if we get to make pennies that other way, that's benefit, but we have to take a total pivot to, and one last comment on this, there's more things we maybe did, but one last comment is, a different friend of mine says this isn't unprecedented. He would say, and he's written several books also, and it's like, it is unprecedented. I mean, you could go back to the bubonic plague or Black Death. You could go to things like that. But even recently, in business, it's not precedented in that the internet was a bigger disruptor than this year and a half. And because people weren't willing to look at that disruption, like Kodak didn't look at it, Kodak invented the first digital camera. But then, it's not that great. So what happened? Instagram ultimately won, and Kodak tanked in 2 years. Blockbuster wouldn't look at the unprecedented impact of the internet on business, and so Netflix took over. So in some ways in business, this isn't that unprecedented, but we have to be willing to have faith in our mission. We're staying with the same mission, but totally confront the brutal facts of what this might be like and how much we might need to pivot, and not kind of like, I'm going to change 10%. No, we got to change 180.
Real quick, you said two things. It was, what can I control? What was the other one? I missed that second one.
When in the U.S. Army, we're called, it's what can I control right now? What can I control? And what should I do first? One thing, not five, not three. What's the first thing I should do? What's the one thing?
Thank you. That's good. Amy, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think like how I'm processing losses, setbacks at this time. I think one of the phrases I heard today was, what is distress over constraints and inconveniences versus trauma? And I want to acknowledge that there's definitely, like, there's communities of color who are experiencing things that are what really the word trauma honors.
Yep.
So there's threads of that in my life and my family as a small business owner, but I'm definitely in the area of stress over constraints and inconveniences.
Yep.
Primarily as a white person. And so even just, I understand the heart of that phrase, like experiencing PTSD, there's a part of that that's very true.
Yep.
There's a great range of variety in the impact of this. So I just want to say that up front. So I start talking about what have been the constraints on my business.
Yep.
I think some of the ways I'm processing that, I'm thinking a lot about being forced forward. How is the Lord forcing me forward in places I need to go? Maybe He's told me to go, but I just am fine to keep doing what I've been doing. And some of those things have really fallen apart. And how do I look at that as a severe mercy, whether it's temporary or whether it's permanent? Clarity, I think He's exposing what are some unwise dependencies I have in my business. Currently I have a contract that's kind of indefinitely canceled right now, and it's a really significant one, and I'm grateful for it. And yet with one canceling contract, I've lost a significant amount of business. And so that really exposes an unwise dependency for me in my business model. Yeah. I don't know if you guys all saw the picture that was floating around last week of the view of the Himalayas from northern India. Like, they're right there on the border of northern India, and because the air quality is the best it's been in 30 years, they can actually see them.
Wow.
And they've always been there. And these aren't the hill countries of Austin. These are the Himalayas, and I'm from Austin. That's why I can say that. I love the hill country. But like, we're talking about huge peaks that aren't visible. And so just trying to let the Lord show me what is becoming really clear. Even if it's devastating clarity, there is clarity to take forward with me. The last thing I would say that just feels like a call the Lord calls me to is, what is this space for? So whatever my losses are, whether it's this contract that's suspended or whatever, clients who don't want to do Zoom. So I've got clients on pause, like that's space. It is loss, but loss is space. And what is this space for? And what am I called to do with this space, whether it is a blizzard or it's a winter or it's an ice age? It may be permanent space. It may be somewhat temporary space. So those are just some of the ways I'm trying to emotionally reframe
Yep.
what I'm tempted to feel devastation or despair about some days.
You know what feels really cool as I'm listening to y'all talk as business leaders and owners and trying to figure this, this next season out. One thing that I think is resonating is you're actually giving yourself the permission to accept the reality that's in front of you, right? And I think so many of us fight that, right? Like, because we just want to go back to normal. We just want things to go back to the way they used to be, instead of, really looking at things and saying, hey, if it doesn't go back to normal, how can I see through, what's to come, and being able to step in encouraged about a new season, opposed to being really discouraged about some, loss or what normal used to look like. So that's encouraging for me. Jay Tuck, did you want to add to that before I moved on to this next little question here?
Yeah, I think one of
He's got to answer his own question now.
I forgot my question, actually. I've been thinking about this one now. Yeah, so I think one of the things that I'm doing is I'm doing a better job of checking in with my clients on just like life stuff. I try to do that. It's more of a sprinkle into like a year-long relationship. You're talking to them a couple times a month. Every now and again, you kind of, talk a little bit more about non-work stuff. But these days, I've been making an intentional point to, one, do a better job of just reaching out, just picking up the phone, calling my clients, which I've always done, but not a great job at. And then starting.
Great job with me, man. I've been a client. You've done a great job, man.
Well, I feel like, I got a virtual assistant that does most of that. And so she's like the warm and fuzzy, and she does all that customer care stuff. But I got to do a better job of just, joining in with her on that and scheduling in that time to just sit down. And so I start these conversations off with just, how are you doing and how's the family? Like, I don't want to, obviously you're calling for business reasons, but everybody's at so many different places. To both David and Amy's point, some people are like, man, we're rocking and rolling. We got new opportunities, and other people are like, I just lost somebody. Yep. And other people are like, I'm borderline out of business because my biggest client was in the airline industry or in some, all my clients I'm a massage therapist, and I don't know what I'm going to. So that's what I'm trying to do, is just, check in on life stuff, and those conversations kind of open up some interesting, I think, doors, not in terms of business, but in terms of like spiritual conversations, and just kind of, I don't know, man. Yeah. This whole thing is it's kind of like, I don't know, some ways God is kind of stripping us of a lot of pretense. You look at my little background, and like, you can tell I don't make a lot of money. I live in a studio apartment. It's just like, I'm doing, but and you look at celebrities, and they're whatever they look like when they're not all dolled up by the makeup team and their houses, and you look at the all of us are just like, it's a humanizing experience that we're going through, and I think it's really healthy. Unfortunately, there's a lot of trauma and a lot of death involved with this as well. So, but God he's doing something, man. It's humbling, and I think humility is a lot of times good. Anyway, I'm rambling. So, yeah.
Well, so let's, again, man, great transition into the next question. Because the next question is, man, what new things are you guys seeing in business? New innovative things that you're not used to seeing, right? Stuff that's popping up. Like Jay, you talked about just wanting to spend more time reaching out to folks, right? Like, this season has given you a clarity to say, it's important for me not to reach out for business purposes only, right? But also just to check in on people, to connect with folks.
Yep.
And so as business leaders, what new innovative things are you seeing, right? That you're like, wow, David, you've spoken a little bit to some of this, but right, like there will be some things in the last season that we just will not be afforded to take into the new season, right? And so innovative things happen all the time to be able to support that happening. What are you guys seeing in your own fields that you're like, okay, I need to pay attention to this a little more?
4 benefits of virtual that I heard. This isn't my grad work, this isn't my research either, but it was noted by a CEO study that with virtual, I haven't been keen on virtual. I love interactive. I love personal. I love touch. I mean, my biggest, well, not, I shouldn't say this. We have, but a sadness of this is what's going to happen to hugs and kisses and touch and closeness for the next decade or two, but the benefits of virtual, I just saw from a study as one example, and I'll just give one example here is virtual. CEOs are connecting with their teams more than they ever have. The average call volume, according to Verizon, every day is twice the highest day of other years, which was Mother's Day. They're connecting more. People are feeling connected with. To Jason's point, the humanization of people, the people are seeing the CEO cat jump on the keyboard and kid run with jammies behind him. And in fact, I was on a publishing call today and a cat jumped on the managing director's, keyboard right in the call, with the president on the call. It's like, but it's life, it's people, it's people are, my team, we were all on a virtual call today and said, so what's everybody wearing on their feet? And I pulled up my naked foot. It was barefoot, but I got my, shirt on because I got to have a different deal going. Now I had to come over to the office today from my house tonight because my internet wasn't very good. So I actually have clothes on today, though I'm not going to be challenged on that. So to this, just virtual on its own. There's humanization that's happening. There's CEOs talking more. There's engagement is going up incredibly. People thought engagement would go down. It's actually gone up because people are feeling like they have to be a part of something and they're seeing the need to sacrifice. And you talk about when the Church of Christ has grown, it's when people have had to sacrifice, not when they've felt all, and that's when we get direction the same way. You saw for a few weeks, not so much fighting. Now it's coming back, and we have in Minnesota protests to not wear masks and protests for all this. But I mean, for a few weeks, people got focused on each other, and they decided we need to sacrifice. And there's such good in sacrifice. You have to either stay home or be a part of the solution. And there's something that was special about that. The other thing that's happened is introverts' voices have been heard, and some companies are seeing such value in this because all these introverts are now sharing the amount of talk time because they're willing to do it on Zoom when they wouldn't do it in the boardroom. So there are benefits. I could go on all night, but that's a few that are starting to be noticed.
Maybe?
Yeah, I'll throw in a couple, a handful of my clients I've been checking in with, a bunch of different industries. Got a auto broker. Been working with them for years, and they have a very unique, come into our office, shake our hand, we're going to find a car for you, come back a week later, you test drive it, and it was high touch. They are actually dropping cars off curbside now, and so they're saying, hey, you know what, we can find your vehicle nationwide, and we will drive up to your house with that car, and we will put the contract documents in your screen door, and you'll fill those out. And then when you put that back in the screen door, and we'll put the keys in there, and then we'll drive off. And so it's been really encouraging. I love the innovative pivoting that businesses have been doing. And there's been a lot of them. And so I got a bodywork professional. He's kind of a stretching massage therapist guy. And he does a lot of continuing ed classes. And so he can't touch people now, but he's ramping up the continuing ed class and looking at, can I do this online? And so there's a lot of really cool kind of the innovation, spark of innovation that I think I just get excited about that.
Well, listen, to that point, before you go, Amy, to that point, I would say if you're a customer, right, if you're a consumer, now's the best time for you, right? Because businesses are catering to you, right? People are dropping off food and like it's coming to you. You can stay at home and life happens, which is, you know, pretty exciting. How on the other side, you know, I think it's really cool to watch businesses think more about the customer than their bottom line, right? And so it's kind of balancing some things out, you know, which I think has unfortunately gotten lost, right, in just the normal business day-to-day life, where it's become so much about product and movement and bottom lines, and it is about, you know, normal dudes like myself, man. They're just trying to make it. So I'm excited about that part, that innovative part. Amy?
Yeah, I think two things that are helpful in this time. One, exposing an area I really need to grow, which is just being more self-promotional. I think we have a negative connotation of that sometimes in the church and ministry circles. And when we start to talk about arrogance, pride, ego, exercising power unjustly, yes, self-promotion is negative. But when you're talking about choosing yourself, being assertive, confident, honestly, I like, you can just look at the beginning of this call, and I just have to say, I did what I do that's a weakness, is I give a really short introduction. And then as the men introduce themselves, I go, oh, I could have said more. I didn't say the name of my business. I didn't talk about the four things.
Yeah.
Like, I just naturally did well, I'll just take up a little bit of space. And then you men beautifully took up 3 or 4 minutes. And I went, I did 30 seconds. Like, that is what I do a lot as a woman. And you just don't have you can't stay safe like that as a female. So whatever self-promotion might be a discomfort for me, I have to keep pressing through that. This time, forcing my hand in a way that no other time does. And so as a female, like, just as a woman business leader, like, it's a great discomfort and it's pushing me in it. Like, I have to keep, maybe there's a better term, you guys can help me, but I have to keep promoting what I'm offering and how I can help people and the transformation I think I can have in their lives. And we're all surviving. No one's going to champion that on my behalf, except me first, with the Lord's, you know, smoothing the path for that. And I'm often happy for other people to say, hey, you should check out Amy and what she does, rather than assert what I can offer and do. So it's uncomfortable, but it's helpful. This time is. And then the other thing that is really just joyous and awesome is when I look at the parts of my business, I only have one part of my business that has been untouched thus far, and it is online. So I run an online story membership. I launched that about 9 months ago. So it's a group. I do small groups from 4 to 6 people. And I use books and movies, just in stories in our everyday life. And we use them kind of to help people go back to their story, their online communities. And it's small, it's 15 to 20% of my business, but I've loved it. So what I was innovative about last year is what is my anchor and my buoy right now. And so I'm so glad I was innovating somehow a year ago. And now when I ask the question, what is this space for? I go, I love this part of my business so much. It's the only thing that was untouched. I'm a fool if I don't press harder into this. And so when I've been content for my membership to grow, you know, a marginal amount every month, I'm like, oh, I've got to go hard here. This has staying power in a way my contracts that happen at conferences don't have right now.
So what's the website? Come on, we need the promotion, Amy. Come on.
Let's go. Here we go.
How do I join? How do I join?
I'll tell you. No, my therapist.
I'm ready to pay. I'm getting my credit card out. Come on, you're waiting too long. What are you wasting your time for?
I'll send you my PayPal link. I'll put that in the message at the end.
Good.
No, so my business is Untold to Rewritten, and it comes from a Maya Angelou quote that the heaviest parts of our lives are stories that are untold. That's the greatest suffering we carry. So from a therapeutic standpoint, That's really the heart of what my business is helping people have a place to tell stories, because I think our stories are very alive in our present. That was true already. I think we really feel that right now.
But I think God led you a year ago to be setting this up. And I think that's the celebration. We have a similar celebration I'm not going to go into, but that God was leading and guiding you then, because there's a lot of people jumping on right now. Ooh, join Kajabi now. Oh, I got to take this to get something, whatever it is. And that's nowhere. And the other thing I just got to say out loud that I love about it, being, CEO of a learning and development company, online learning today is impossible to sell almost, unless you have groups where you facilitate.
Yeah.
So what you're doing, in my mind, I just want to affirm publicly, it's brilliant, because going and selling some Kajabi course, you can get free TED Talks and everything. People think, oh, for $29, they're going to make a bunch of money. No chance. But facilitated by you, if that's how you created it, and I understood that right, that's the winner. And that's, by the way, the biggest Stanford study just showed online learning on its own doesn't work unless there's the right coach or teacher, which is you're using online, but facilitating. And I think that's the brilliant point of what you've done. So that's your ad from me to you, as an advertisement of, wow, Amy.
Thank you.
And I'll just say this. I've walked with Amy for the last 3 or 4 years, and I've actually watched it in person, and she does an amazing job walking folks through their story and helping them get to a place that is really, really healthy. So, okay, so here's the deal, y'all. We have 10 minutes to get to these last 2 questions, and they're really important questions because as we're talking about innovation, right, there are also just some tried and true practices that continue to work for you as business leaders, right? And so folks that are thinking about business in the future, as we said before, want to hear that. Like, what things still work for you, right? Even though we are walking into a new season and we're thinking about the future and trying to be innovative and adjusting and being agile, there's still some things that you're doing, right? That you've been doing for 20 years. And for Amy, maybe, she's a lot younger than all of us, man, so maybe a lot less time. But what are some of those things that you're doing? What are the tried and true things as business leaders that you're continuing to do?
We'll start with you. I have something that ties into what Amy said. Two things jump to mind for me. One, and I think that the sensitivity of us learning from Amy as an example, or somebody else. So for me, I built my business. It's half women, half men. My president, so kind of my colleague running, is African American. I think this is the stuff Issachar does well, and those of you at Issachar, I think the huge benefit is, I'm so terrible at so many things, and I still am learning. Every day, I have this bias that I didn't understand. I have that piece, and yet I am honored by Milton that it's not my fault that I'm a white male, right? And I'm also honored by Allison and by Ann. It's not my fault that I'm a white male. They love me, and I love them. And this is a big value of Issachar right now and always, that we need different voices as leaders. We are in an incredible, this is stuff you all know at Issachar, but this is what works, because I still see homogenous organizations that aren't able to flex in this time as well as we are, just because we're used to a different kind of flexibility and understanding and sensitivity and humility and perception. And I know I don't come across, I maybe come across as a strong leader, but there's a huge sensitivity. But that's something that's always worked, bringing in all of God's kingdom as much as we can. We don't have everything. I don't have, an Iraqi American, and I don't have a person that's been through this specific thing. But when we get variety of God's kingdom in our teams, we are able to do a whole lot of things differently because we think differently. That's one. Number two, that came to mind is input always leads to output. That's a business truth, but it's a biblical truth. It's a scientific truth. First law of thermodynamics: the energy you put in is the energy you get out. Theology. So, physically, if I put in a bad bowl of chili, I get some bad input out. Input always Input always equals output. And so the truth that is always never, always is what you put into your business, just like what I put in my body. If I put, you know, certain things in my body, I get certain things. If I put certain things in a marriage, I get certain things. I get to put certain things into my mind. This is why, you know, and biblically, as a man thinks, so is he. This is why take your thoughts captive. This is why, you know, Philippians 4:8, whatever's true, whatever's noble, whatever's right, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, whatever's admirable, if anything's excellent or praiseworthy, think on those things. That input equals output. And out of the mouth, you know, comes what's in. So that's what we, as leaders, I think really always works. If we're putting the right input in our minds, our bodies, our businesses. I can go, you know, we assess companies with an enterprise trust index, doesn't really matter. But the reason we assess them, this is the whole reason. Because I can look at the input and I can guarantee the output. I can look at the input of a global government and guarantee the output just by looking at the input, because it's science. And that, I'm not saying this arrogantly. I'm just saying this is a truth, biblical and life truth. And so that's what I would encourage people today to think about. It's always going to work that way. So what is your input? If you're putting pornography into your life, you're going to get a certain type of marriage. If you're putting, this much sugar into your body, you're going to get this kind of lethargy or weight. If you put this into a relationship, and it's the same with business. And so my job as a leader is really continually thinking, what's the input of our team? Because I want a high performing team. I want a team that loves each other. I want a culture that's great. So I have to put certain things into it. And that takes being intentional and sometimes even sacrificial and not doing it the easy way. That's all.
That's good. Thank you, David. That's really good, brother.
Good.
Jay Tuck, tried and true. What's still working for you?
Most of it, actually. I think going back to the reaching out to clients, doing the basic stuff, checking your stats, you know, I mean, there's a lot of kind of business modeling things. After a while, you start to know kind of what's driving your business. I had a coach early on kind of say, you know, if you're a sports fan and you know, Michael Jordan's free throw percentage or a baseball player's batting average or, you know, Tiger Woods, you know, percentage of holes on the green, like that's great, but we know that because those guys are professionals. And he was like, well, you're a professional too, and you better know your own numbers better than you know Michael Jordan's. And so he said, and this is proven true over the last 10 years that I've seen, is every business pretty much has like 3 or 4 numbers that drive the business. And so when you know those numbers, you can really get a good hold of like, am I doing well? Because you're always busy, to Amy's point, but a lot of it's not billable at certain stages and all the stuff. And so I just track those numbers. In my case, I got 3 numbers. I have number of coffees I do per week. Obviously that's different these days, but it's more virtual engagements. Number of consultations I have per week, and number of closings. And so I track those numbers and I know where I need to be to hit my quarters and to hit my years. And so just kind of, I think a lot of that basic business stuff is you just got to continue to stay at it. And the thing that I am concerned about is one of the things is the lack of prospecting. So and there are ways to do it that I'm starting to find out and learn about, but we can't meet at the, association events, and we can't do the coffee sessions, and we're not at the networking happy hours. And so in my business as a consultant, that's where like all the stuff comes. Now, granted, I have a lot of nurturing I do for past clients, that's really what's been driving it now. But if your prospecting really drops, you typically feel it, like, depending on your closing cycle, a couple months later. If your closing cycle is longer. But that's the part that I'm like, man, I wonder what July is going to look like, just because I know my numbers and they ain't good right now, because I haven't been able to get those coffees in. So, but it is I'll tell you, man, the prayer about daily bread is a real prayer. And it's been real for me for a while, since, starting a business and going through those really lean years. But I started in 2010, which coming out of the housing market stuff. And I'm back to that kind of mentality where it's like, man, everything is like, every check you cash and you close is like, thank you, Lord. Like, it's for real, man. And so that part has been good. Like, yeah.
Yep. The Lord's Prayer. You just encouraged me to do that every day. I should be doing it already. Don't do it, but Amy,
Yeah,
tried and true.
I would say keep being generative, keep generating, keep brainstorming, even if there are ideas you can't do right now, even if there's ideas you're months away from, or you're unsure if you'll have the resources to do. Blogging, I'm trying to keep blogging, even though what I have to say doesn't feel much different than what we all have to say. Yeah, like keep finding a place to generate new expansive ideas, even if half of my ideas never come to fruition anyway. But I probably had to generate 20 ideas before I figured out my online membership idea. And that wasn't original. Other people are doing that. How I'm doing it has some unique design. So keep designing, keep drawing on napkins, even if you don't know what to do with them, tuck them away in a file. That's an image that's come to mind a lot. This last month is forest fires, and because we have a good amount of them, you can go hiking on any Colorado trail and see some section of a trail that's had a forest fire go through it. And I just keep thinking, like, the natural world knows this. The natural world clears out stuff so that new life can start, and kind of opens up the canopy so sunlight gets in. And so how is this space? What is being kind of burned away so that there's a clearing in a space? I hope for a lot of change for our nation, a lot of equity, a lot of places that have been true for a long time but are now exposed in our nation. But in my business, also in my own personal life, the forest fire is clearing space for something, for sunlight to get to something. And what is that? I don't know that I'll have an answer of that in weeks or months. I think it'll be 2 or 3 years before I look back and go, I would not have this or have gotten this check had it not been for something in this time. So I don't expect it to be a fast return on investment type of answer. But on days I get discouraged, I think about forest fires when they're naturally sparked, have really good results, generative results. And I just have to keep generating and creating.
Amen. That's the truth.
So we got one last, in 30 seconds or less, so we can keep this going, because this question is really important. Especially for me as somebody that dreams, like you said, keep dreaming, keep going, right? Keep creating. What's one thing as business leaders you're hopeful about, right? Because, sometimes you turn on TV, we find ourselves in these seasons and it's really hard, right? And Jay, you talked about it maybe 20 minutes ago when you just said, man, does this even matter, right? Like, does all this stuff even matter? But when you think about the future, what's one thing you're hopeful about? In 30 seconds or less, we're going to get Anthony back on, then we're going to open up for some questions and answers. But 30 seconds or less, what's one thing you're hopeful about as a business
leader? I really think we're more hopeful than we're coming across right now.
Yeah, I'm just trying to pick the one.
Okay, you go.
I'm struggling. I've used all my hopeful metaphors. Come on, Jason.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you guys, man. I've always been like this, but I'm trying to hold two truths. I think you got to this, David. Is God still God if the economy totally collapses and we're Mad Maxing it for the next 50 years? Yes, I'm hopeful about that. And I totally think my business is going to do great in all of this. And I think a lot of businesses are. So I'm hopeful about that. But I am not. Now, it's easier for me to say this because I don't have children or wife, and I don't have staff. So it is a different weight that you guys carry that have that. But even with that, God is still God, and he's still going to provide. He keeps his eye on the sparrow. You know what I mean? Like, and so even if our luxurious American way of life completely dissolves, because nations, that happens. I don't know. Like, I think in these terms, and it's like, you know, it's up to him. He's going to do what he wants to do, but it's okay either way. And even if we die, for us as Christians, that's like, even like, man, we're in, man. We've done our part. So that's the stuff in this morbid time. I'm just being real. That's like, that's the anchor, man. That's the
Amen to that, bro.
Yeah. And I still feel like there's a lot of great business stuff that'll come out of this potentially. So I'm really hopeful about some of that more natural stuff too.
Thanks, brother. Okay, we gotta wrap up here soon. Y'all got any last thoughts about that, David, Amy?
I can, but I'm going to defer to Amy and then I'll go.
Okay.
I would
Amy?
just say pruning bears more fruit eventually.
I wrote that down.
Yep. I think that was the greatest thing said tonight. Forest fire makes space for something. But I think two things I'm hopeful about. One, I'm hopeful because of what happens when people have to sacrifice and rely on each other and need each other. And I'm hopeful of what can happen kingdom-wise. And I also am hopeful in what can happen business-wise if you have a missional business where actually sharing the life-changing truth of Christ is at the core, which at least for us it is. So I think that I'm hopeful in. I want to say one last thing to the last question because I was supposed to say it in my mind and I think God let it, but I didn't say it. And that is, if I was going to do one thing and I was anyone out there, so you know the story for me, you know, I started with $1.40 in my pocket. I was in the basement of 86-year-old Clara Miller's home with black mold, no windows, no bathroom or kitchen. That's where I started our business. Lisa and I lived there for 2 years. And we really did start with, for Americans, nothing. And that's all we had. We had no savings, no nothing. But we fasted every week for 24 hours and we cried out to God and God moved. And I'm hopeful because I've seen him do it over and over and over again with us. But if there was one thing I was going to do, if I was any of the entrepreneurs listening, if I was going to focus on one thing, it would be right now, build relationships with mentors. It would be that, if I look back on what changed me the most, what God used to change me the most, relationships. We all say it's a relationship business, but we don't really know the gravity of what that means. It really is. Build relationships. That person that opens the door, that person, relationships. Reach out, do coffee like Jason, reach out and I think he wants to. That's the church.
Amen. I'll just finish with this before Ant jumps in. I'll just say this. Thank you all for, I told you the time was going to go quick, but thank you all for walking with us through those questions. I think in times like this, it's easy to find ourselves not hopeful, right? It's easy, and that's a lie from the pit of hell, right? The enemy seeks to kill, steal, and destroy. But I come so that you may have life and have it abundantly. And so when we think about an abundant life and think about the hope for what God has, not only for here, but for eternity, I think we should spend time in times like this to encourage ourselves that, man, God is still on the throne, to Jay's point, right? Like, he is still God. So, amen to that. Okay, Anthony Cotton, the greatest of all. What's up, bro? What we doing now, man?
Let's jump in with some Q&A, and I've got a couple questions lined up, and then I have a personal one if we get time for it. But we'll start with Kevin Taylor. Kevin, if you are still here, hello, my brother. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you a little bit later. But this question says, for Amy and others as they want to address it, what goes on in your head that allows you to have the confidence to promote yourself? Even if you're not comfortable with it, is it the belief that you in particular have things that the world needs? Is it a sense of calling that you have from God or other things? What gives you that confidence?
Yeah, I think, my Enneagram number is a 4, that I'm special and unique. That helps me. My theology, that we all have something, that helps me for sure. Seth Godin, his voice as an author and podcaster, has been a great mentor, like an indirect from a distance mentor in that. I think his big phrase is pick yourself. And I just keep remember, like, I have to pick myself. Why do I think someone would hire me or choose me, especially for something as vulnerable as a therapist, a spiritual guide, a facilitator? Why would they pick me? I have to pick myself. And that's not to elevate myself above someone. That's not in comparison, but just a sense of like, I do have something unique to offer. That's where I feel like all of our stories are unique. So I think actually I need a myriad of voices. It's not one thing. I have like to have the gumption to promote myself with a price tag that dignifies what I can do and the services I do. Like, I have to pull together that theology heart. I have to pull together some great teaching about marketing, words of encouragement from people I've impacted. You have to shore all that up inside of you over time. Record it, shore it up. That's my thought.
I love that. I love that. Fellas, any thoughts?
I think she summed it up well. Yeah, good.
Awesome. Awesome. And then Kevin also asked, David, this is for you. He asked you to share the Stanford study that you referred to about ineffectiveness of online learning without the presence of a facilitator.
So email me, david@trustedge.com, and david@trustedge.com. I don't have it I have it in my head a little bit, but I have to pull it up somewhere.
Awesome. And for everybody watching, David's website, Amy's website, Jason's website are in the chat. They'll also get posted to Facebook, but they're in the chat right now if you want to copy those down and reach out with questions like that or other questions that you might have. And then if it's okay, I'm gonna answer that question too, just about confidence. The first question you asked, Kevin, because I'm in an industry where I'm up front a lot, and a lot of the things that give me confidence is I kind of think about, and this might come across arrogant, but if I don't do it, who will? And a lot of the times the who will are people that aren't centered in Christ and aren't trying to point people to wholeness and things of that nature. So just the idea of like, it's not even about me being super cool. It's me kind of advocating for God, because otherwise there's a lot of people who aren't advocating for God out there that are super confident. So that kind of helps me. Just thought I'd chime in for a second. My personal question, Amy, you dropped a couple gems. One of them that you dropped that I don't know if people caught was the whole idea of, I think you said North India, they have a view of the Himalayas that is like now being seen all of a sudden because of the air quality. That was crazy to me. And I just want to ask all of you, what are some of the Himalayas in your life? If you kind of processed any of them, or anything comes to mind, things that you think God is slowly starting to reveal and show you? And that question's for everybody, Art, you included.
That's a great question, man.
I think, there's a statement that says, character is not made in crisis. It's just seen. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the truth. And the challenge is, I talk about trust, and I research trust, and I try to help people build trust. And I see my, how I'm not perfect at anything I teach. And in crisis, you see that even more. I see that even more. My, whatever it is that I need. So I think it was interesting. I agree with Amy. I see the cracks in our business. They come alive in crisis. Like, we need to change that. But I also see him. You also see him in your own character when I get frustrated with a kid when I was really up all night thinking about how am I going to take care of the team or whatever it is. So I think those Himalayas are ones that I need to climb.
Yeah, I think for me, I've said some of them, like the only untouched part of my business is this online membership. That feels like huge clarity. I love the work I do with organizations, and yet if they're conference based, something like this wipes them out. And when you talk about a therapeutic setting that's telling narrative stories as part of leadership development, you lose a good amount of that strength in virtual. And so that shows me kind of an unhealthy or a disproportionate dependence on one contract or on a type of contract that I have. So that's really clarifying, what do I want to do with that? I still want to do that work. It's not that I have to stop moving toward that. And I can't build my membership to double what it is overnight. That's going to take months. It's a long, slow burn, but that's where I want to sow seeds. And that's where I want to balance out a business model. But I agree with David, like there's personal ones, like this is a glitch in my marriage and I'm sitting with it in a month in a way I don't have to in my busy, buffered, raising teenagers world. Or here's anxiety a kid has. Oh, look, not being in school for a month hasn't made that go away. That needs attention. So there's personal Himalayans, there's business. It's just kind of a whole every area of my life has some sense of uncomfortable, valuable exposure. Will I be courageous enough to record that? Will I be courageous enough to take note? Will I remember they're there when the air gets smoggy again? It will. It will get smoggy again. Will I remember what I've seen?
That's good.
That's really good. Really good.
Jason, did you have thoughts now about your Himalayans?
No, I don't. It's interesting because the Himalaya, initially I was thinking until you said that, Amy, that it was like the revelation of a beautiful thing that was right in front of you just didn't notice. And then David mentioned the challenge of a thing that you need to climb. Mm-hmm. So, but I'm in the fog, less of a fog than it was 3 weeks ago, but I don't have clarity enough to really say anything yet. So, I mean, I got clarity on stuff I'm working on, but I've had that. There's nothing new that just kind of like opened up and I'm just like, oh my gosh, not yet anyway.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is personally would be just this self-care idea. I think we all talk about it, we generalize, we talk about it in ways that it can be pretty distant, right? And so I think personally over the last month, I've had to engage it because it's right in front of my face now. Like the smog is lifted and I'm like, okay. Right? Like to some of the points that you guys made earlier, like this idea of rest and exercise and the food and things that we put in our body, right? That the input always equals output. Like when you're burning the candle on both ends, right? And you're trying to get things moving. It's almost an excuse to not, at least for me, I'll speak for me. It's almost been an excuse not to engage. Engage with some of the things that have been right in front of me, and that are pretty big things. And so, that's been significant for me.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing. We got a couple more questions coming in. Metro Atlanta Leadership Foundation. I think this is Cornelius.
I was thinking he should be on here. Of course, he should be on this panel.
He was on here last week.
Oh, was he?
He was with us last week. But he's asking, what aspects of your business have you decided to forego as you move forward? And that's open to anybody that wants to answer.
For us, I mean, we believe that live events will have until a vaccine is in mass, people are getting back to work. But I mean events, like I was booked to speak and, open an event in Dubai for 10,000 people September 1st. That got canceled, just like a lot of other events that are a lot smaller. So we can't think this way of we'll be all better in 4 months or 6 months. And that, even though it's me, that's a high margin revenue that covers a lot of the team, my hours on that. So, so we have let go of, like, it would be stupid to push that. It's kind of like, hey, you want to have me speak? You want to have David speak? You want to have and we have other speakers. So we had to, it's whatever is, I guess for other people, it's whatever doesn't work now. It doesn't mean it won't work forever, but it is for us, we have kept the mission exactly the same. We are only about this mission. So what are the avenues that would work now? Well, and we put on an international virtual event last week that had people from Kyrgyzstan and Quebec and around the world. That was very unique. Now some of, yeah, also there's something somebody said earlier about being human and kind of loving people and also caring about the bottom line. And God talked a whole lot about money. And if it actually, you need money to serve your people well. So it's how we use it. So because I was a part of a ministry one time, and they would come back and say, well, we just pray about it. We never think about the bottom line. And they were done doing ministry within 1 year because they would never look at how they were going to cover costs and deal with the bottom line. So this is a thing in business and frankly in ministry. I wish every MDiv had to do a finance course, because a lot of pastors are trying to run churches and they aren't dealing with, they're avoiding this very central thing that Jesus talked a whole lot about, which is money. So I have to take care of my flock, I have to think about things that will fulfill our mission and are financially viable now. And so we certify coaches in our work. We have a significant assessments and online platform for that. An executive coach could build their whole coaching business on our platform for a fraction of the cost of anywhere else, as an example. So we're focusing on that, serving them well right now, because we help our mission of helping them increase trust, and it's something that's viable now.
That's super good. Super good.
I would just say it's interesting, man, when you talk about mass gatherings, right? Because, you know, I've been in a ministry seat where mass gatherings, I mean, was what we did, and gathered people, whether it was to walk through leadership development stuff or outreach ministry opportunities or fundraising, whatever it is. And so to the question, I'm like, man, the idea of mass gatherings, the way they used to be, is going to be on hold for a while. However, there's still mass gatherings happening, and it looks a lot like this, right? And so being able to step more into these, having more conversations with folks. I am like you, David, I'm pretty touchy-feely, right? Like, I want to be with folks. I want to engage. I want to sit with people. And I have come to find that this can be not, you know, maybe not as effective in my own heart, right? But just as effective when in regards to trying to accomplish the same mission. So
that is true.
point,
And that was a surprise for me too. We had people say about this last week's event that there were many parts of it that were better. And we're known for putting some phenomenal in-person events on. Like, we treat people white glove. And we had people say it was better in ways. And so it's something we got to get over too. It's not about what we like, it's about accomplishing the mission, right? So I had the same a little bit revelation.
Yeah, it's the sacred cows that I think we all hold in our own mind. So to Corin's question, you know, to that question, I'm like, man, look, if we can get rid of some of the things that we hold as, you know, priority or meaningful, right, to what the response has been. And the response has been amazing from not only folks that I'm working with professionally, but also my own family, right? Like, to do these Zoom family calls has been crazy for our family. I'm like, man, these are dope, right? So, yeah.
One more thought on that is just, my friend wrote a book called It's All About Them. And the point is, right now, it's still all about them. So it's not about, it might be easy for me to get on a stage and speak. It's something that is more natural to me than some people. But that's not the point. The point is transforming an idea that transforms actions, that transforms behavior, that transforms a culture, right? So it's, what is it for them now? And that's that thinking is what we have to do as leaders, is be missional. So we can have the same mission, but it's about them, not about us. I like to just do it on a stage. That's easier for me. I don't get that luxury. I got to learn technology. I got to change things. And that's the thinking I think that God's pushing us toward in this time.
Great.
One thing I would add to that is, and I'll keep this really short because I see the time, but I'm really reevaluating my referral networks, because this has prevented some of them from flowing in, and it's not an obstacle for others. And so that's a really short answer, but it's kind of got me looking at what are my referral networks for my business, and which ones are really stalemate versus which ones are unaffected. And I want to sow more of the ones that aren't handicapped or hamstringed by this type of setting, by these type of constrictions or restrictions.
That's good.
And I would say too, like there's some pricing stuff that I'm pretty big on just in my business, and it works, set prices that are the same for everyone, and then you just a la carte it. But, the flexibility to be able to say, well, this is unprecedented. It seems like it's an easy thing to, like, everyone should know, but I have to process to say, okay, I need to loosen up my price. Maybe it's not that I drop the prices all the time. I drop some, but maybe it's a different model of pricing. Maybe it's a different engagement, different staging. Maybe it's different mediums. So I think I say that to say your business model in general, I think you should be okay with leaving it all and rebuilding it with whatever is, to David's point, going to get you across the finish line in this window. Because those components of your business can always be brought back in. But if you're holding tight to too many of those different parts of the business model, you just can't really dynamically pivot if you need to.
My coach used to always say, Jay, to that, agility. It's all about agility. And I'm like, in business, this makes sense, right? Businesses that are not agile, that can't maneuver well, will not thrive.
Yep.
And some things won't go back. Some things are going to change forever. This is a monumental time that is going to change some things forever. I mean, and to add to what Art said, I mean, a coach could say business is all about relationships. They could say business is all about trust. It's all about a mix of these things, and yet each of them are all about. But it is worth noting right now, some things are going to change forever. And well, that's why I say the mission can be the same, but some things we will be Blockbuster or instead of Netflix, or we will be Kodak instead of Instagram in some ways, if we stay the same. Mm-hmm. Some things will come back, but some won't.
That's good.
And pray about it. Like, let God, he's the one that comes up with all this cool stuff anyway. If you're a business owner and you're a Christian, man, plug into the source, because he'll give you stuff that's like set up for stuff that just human understanding really can't do. So we got to do our part with the knowledge and the resources and just the things that he gives us. But there's this extra dimension that we have access to, and God wants to be a part of our businesses too.
Jason, very well put. I think we should just end on that note. That was an amazing period, exclamation point, whatever you want to call it. And Amy was saying that she said literally a year ago she started to shift to some online stuff that prepared her for now, even though she didn't know she needed to be prepared for now. So that is just confirmation that is true. Panel, I just want to thank you guys so much. I really feel, as you were saying through the call, God is on the throne. He's using this. Some of the things that you talked about are common themes that keep coming up over the weeks. God on the throne. There's just a few things that I've heard from different people. This might change forever, and that might sound daunting, but I think it's just good to prepare for that. So just thank you all so much for your time, for your leadership, and just being here with us tonight. Again, everybody, these are iSSACHAR Virtual Tuesday nights. Thank you all for tuning in. If you want to go back and watch it, it'll be posted on Facebook tomorrow. We're also going to have everybody's website. So if you want to reach out to them and learn more about their business or do business with them in this time, you'll have access to that. So be looking for that on the iSSACHAR Facebook page tomorrow. Again, panel, thank you all so much. And have a great evening. Have a great tomorrow. Have a great, however long this thing lasts.
Whatever you're in, blizzard, winter, or ice age.
Yeah, whatever it may be.
Check out Amy's classes, her new classes.
Yes, they are untouched. Come join.
All right. Good night, y'all.
Thanks, you guys.